Hello, I'm Robin. On this channel, I love sharing about books, especially children's books. And today I'm getting in the Halloween spirit by sharing 10 not so spooky picture books. So I am not a person who likes scary stories or movies. That is just not my jam. But I remember a Halloween several years ago now when my daughter was young and we were sitting around a campfire, just our little family, and I couldn't help but thinking it would be super fun to read a little bit of a spooky story to her. Now, I didn't want to scare her or anything like that. I was just getting into the Halloween mood and felt like it would be fun just to have a sort of exciting story that had an element of spookiness without really being that spooky or that scary. I feel like ever since then, it has just been on my radar to seek out picture books that sort of met that criteria, like a step beyond just like here is a pumpkin, here is a cat, here's a trick-or-treater in a tall pointy hat, that type of thing. So like a little bit of spooky to it beyond some of those basic picture books. And while not all the books I am sharing today are even specifically Halloween or that fall-y, they all do have like a little element of suspense without being scary. So for these books today, I was just going to do them in random order, but I figured I might as well just go chronologically and start at the beginning. This first book, The Monster at the End of This Book. This was written by John Stone and illustrated by Michael Smullen, and it was originally published in 1971. So I have fond memories of this book from my childhood. In this book, lovable, furry old Grover from Sesame Street is trying to stop you, the reader, from turning the pages because there is a monster at the end of this book and Grover is scared. So he is doing everything in his power to stop you, the reader, from turning these pages. He is building walls and tying pages together, all while begging the reader to please stop turning the pages. And of course, at the end, he realizes there was nothing to be scared about in the first place. I love that this is an interactive book before they were all the rage. It is short and simple and funny and fun. And if you have not read it, I highly recommend it. So obviously this is not a Halloween specific book, but I feel with the little bit of suspense in there and the monster theme, it could definitely work as a Halloween picture book. It is definitely one of our favorites, and apparently I'm a little bit obsessed with this book because when I went to go look at our copies, I realized we have not one, not two, not three, but 4 copies of this book. I think anytime I see it at a garage sale or a thrift store or a library sale, I pick one up because I love this book. Also, there was another book written years later that had Grover and Elmo called Another Monster at the end of this book, and that one is equally delightful. This next book was also published in 1971. It is called Bears in the Night by Stan and Jan Berenstain. I feel like the Berenstain Bears were such a huge part of my childhood, and so this book also just feels very familiar to me. This book has limited words and it uses lots of repetition and lots of prepositions in its telling of the story. There are 7 bear siblings who hear a noise in the night and they decide to get out of bed and go investigate what that noise is. We watch their journey up to discover the noise and then getting a little bit spooked and running back home. And of course, ending up safe back in their bed. So as I said, I definitely have a bit of nostalgia for this book. I enjoy its simplicity, and I think especially as a read-aloud, the reader can make this whatever they want. They can make it a lesson about placement and positions, or they can make it a bedtime story, or definitely, in this case, as sort of a spooky Halloween story as well. This next story is an old English folk story, and this particular version of it was published in 1984. It is called The Teeny Tiny Woman. And this particular retelling and illustrations were done by Paul Gauldon. This one definitely ramps up the spooky factor. This is a ghost story about a teeny tiny woman who finds a teeny tiny bone and takes it back to her teeny tiny house. I feel like delivery is a huge part of this story. So while it could be a bit spooky and maybe a bit odd, I feel like the repetition of the teeny tiny makes it just kind of silly and fun and definitely adds like a levity to the story for sure. I love the final brave and funny punchline. This book is not for everyone. As I read reviews of it, I see that some people just think it's too weird. But I grew up hearing this story and I have such fond memories of my dad reading this to us when we were kids. So it definitely holds a special place in my heart. And while it can be read any time of year, I think this one is especially appropriate around the Halloween folly time. And can I just say, if I could hop into this little village for just a moment, I would love that. I just adore that page. This next book is quite popular, or at least it was for a time, called The Gruffalo. This was published in 1999, and it was written by Julia Donaldson and illustrated by Axel Scheffler. So in this book, a mouse is walking through the forest, and anytime a predator comes along, the mouse tells the predator that they are going off to meet the Gruffalo. As the mouse describes the Gruffalo, each predator is scared away. And eventually the mouse does run into a Gruffalo, but the mouse uses their wits to then scare away the Gruffalo as well. So this book is a lot of fun. And there is a companion book to this as well called The Gruffalo's Child. And this book has a lovely, lovely animated version, which you might be able to find on YouTube. While I'm not always a fan of animated versions of stories, this one is really well done. This next book is one of my favorites. It is called Room on the Broom. This was published in 2001, and it was created by the same team as The Gruffalo, so Julia Donaldson and Axel Scheffler. The witch in this story is a very stereotypical looking witch, but I personally find her adorable. But unlike her stereotypical exterior, she is a super sweet and friendly witch. As she and her cat fly happily on their broomstick, she keeps dropping items accidentally, and as she goes to look for them, they keep gathering new friends who would also like to join them on their broom ride. That is, until the broom can't handle any more passengers. This book is told in such a delightful rhythmical rhyme, very much like The Gruffalo. I feel like it has some repetition to keep it accessible for little ones because it is a little bit of a longer story, but there's also enough story in it to keep it fun and interesting for everyone. I love that this book, much like a lot of picture books, does not shy away from big vocabulary like clambered or bounded. And I love that the witch is kind and sweet, and her friends are able to return the kindness that she showed them by being there for her when she needs them. The pictures in this book are so vibrant and they fit the story so well. This book is definitely on our annual must-read Halloween list. And we also ended up watching the animated short for Room on the Broom, and it is darling. I love it so much. I love it equally with the book. It's so well done. I definitely recommend it if you can track it down. We happen to get a DVD of it, but I think that this one also is on YouTube somewhere. Mrs. McMurphy's Pumpkin was published in 2004. It was written by Rick Walton and illustrated by Delana Bitoli. As Halloween approaches, Mrs. McMurphy starts getting daily visits from a spooky and mysterious pumpkin showing up in her house. Each day, a new facial feature starts appearing on this pumpkin jack-o'-lantern, and the pumpkin keeps threatening her that when its mouth appears, it will eat her. And Mrs. McMurphy, who is the farmer at this quaint, beautiful farm, responds to each of these encounters very gently but very firmly by putting the pumpkin in its place, so to speak. When I first read this to our daughter when she was young, I wasn't sure how this one would go because this one does ramp up the kind of spooky factor a little bit for sure. But I think that Mrs. McMurphy's strong character, carefree reactions to the pumpkin definitely keep the story a little more approachable for little ones and keep it kind of light. But I do like that this one is a little bit more spooky. Definitely campfire vibes for sure. And depending on when you're reading this or how you're reading it out loud, you can definitely change that spooky factor depending on your audience. I know I've read some reviews of this book where people did not quite get it or like this book. It just didn't resonate with some people the way it did for me, but I love this book. It is one of our must reads every year. It is one of my favorite Halloween books. This next book was published in 2011. It is Miss Fiona's Stupendous Pumpkin Pies. This was written by Mark Kimball Moulton and illustrated by Karen Hillard Good. So Miss Fiona the witch uses secret ingredients to cook up her pumpkin pies every Halloween. And the book tells us she may look like a kooky witch, but she has goodness deep within. And in her warm and cozy house, she invites trick-or-treaters every year to come enjoy pumpkin pie and stories. So it's definitely not scary. I think the only weird part for me as a parent is that these children show up at a woman's house on Halloween night without their parents there, and they're eating pie at midnight. But there's nothing really that scary about this one. This is a little bit of a longer picture book, but the story and the rhyming verse definitely keep it moving along. And I especially do like that the kids, instead of being scared by going to the witch's house, to Miss Fiona's house, it is the highlight of their Halloween night. I love that this is a Halloween book with all the trappings of Halloween without being scary. Love Monster is one of my favorite picture book series, so this one had to be on the list. This is Love Monster and the Scary Something, published in 2015 by Rachel Bright. This one can definitely be read any time of year, but I do love that it kind of fits in with this Halloween spooky, not spooky theme. So sweet, adorable Love Monster does his nighttime routine. He reads a bunch of books. And as he's trying to fall asleep, he keeps hearing noises. And some of those noises are familiar and some of them are not. And he lets his imagination just take off in the wrong direction. But he ends up facing his fear head on and is definitely able to laugh at the big misunderstanding. This is just as wonderful as all of Rachel Bright's books, and it's a perfect one for teaching onomatopoeia if you're talking about that with students. And it's also just a sweet reminder about being brave and how sometimes our imaginations can play tricks on us. The Millie Fleur books are brand new to me. I know they're pretty new to the world as well. This one, Millie Fleur Saves the Night, was published in 2025. And this book is by Christine Mandan. Millie Fleur and her mom are pretty new to the town of Garden Glen, where everyone likes to keep their lights pretty bright at night. They are all scared of the dark. But Millie and her night garden prefer the dark, so she actively sets out to welcome the dark. And I love the way that Christy Mandan shows the dark as this sweet, lovable creature who's a little bit shy. And even though the townspeople were very skeptical at first of Millie Fleur's dark, sort of mysterious house, they all start to learn about some of the special gifts that the dark brings. I am so grateful to have found Millie Fleur. These books feel so familiar to so many of my favorite picture books while still being fresh and original. And I am already so anticipating the next release in this picture book series. This last book, Grizelda the Green Hates Halloween, is also a 2025 book. And this one is a very last minute addition to my list of books. I was going to do only 9 and I just found this one. This book is written by A.A. Livingston and illustrated by Katya Longi. This book is The Grinch, but for Halloween. So Grizelda does not like trick-or-treaters. They scare away her dragon and they scare away her cauldron and her spiders. And she does everything she can think of to frighten or discourage these trick-or-treaters. But to her surprise, everything she does not deter the children. Because even though she assumes that the children think Halloween is all about the candy or the pumpkins, she comes to realize that these children realize that the true meaning of Halloween is actually exactly what Grizelda has. So in a heart-growing 3 sizes moment, Grizelda comes around and becomes the hero of the night. So hopefully some of these books can give you some ideas or inspiration for some spooky, not so spooky picture books to share with the kids in your life or to read for yourself. Again, I think a lot of it is in the delivery or the setting where you're reading them. So if you wanted to ramp up the spooky factor, read them in the dark with a flashlight or change your delivery. But if you wanted to keep these all kind of light, I think that's definitely doable too. Out of these 10, again, the ones that I think would be maybe the spookiest would be the Teeny Tiny Woman and Mrs. McMurphy's Pumpkin. Hopefully you enjoyed this list, and I hope you have a very wonderful Halloween. Thank you so much for being here, and I will see you next time. Bye.